All right, coming up tonight, hey, it's Sunday night podcast. So we're going to be looking at this right here on Ohio Political News. We got our special guest, Mark Kaye. Can he shock Florida? That's what we're going to find out here. We've got the commish with us. John Pleshnik, good to see you, John. And we got our special guest here tonight. Really excited to have you with us. Mark Kaye is with us here tonight, podcaster and congressional candidate. Woo! It doesn't get any bigger than this. All right, so we got to get into this because I'm excited to hear about this. So, Mark Kaye, a longtime conservative radio host, podcaster, and Newsmax television personality who has spent nearly 2 decades communicating directly with the Florida voters. Mark is now taking his fight from the broadcast studio to the campaign trail as a Republican candidate for Congress's 5th congressional district. Is that right? The 5th district. They said it couldn't be beaten, and Mark Kaye said, that's a bunch of BS. I can do it. Also, I want to also reiterate this, too, because you've gone from radio now to podcasting. It sounds like, unless you're still on the radio, I'm not sure.
No, I'm not on the radio anymore.
Okay, so you've gone completely into podcasting. You've got 2 shows: Mark Kaye Saves the Republic and 47 Daily, right? So you got 2 podcasts. Do you have any more, or are those both of them?
You know, I think 2's probably enough. 2's probably good for right now. Maybe we'll do some more later. Maybe we'll start branching out and doing a network. No, Mark Kaye Saves the Republic is my live daily show, very similar to what we did on the radio. But you know, there's no consultants anymore. There's no calls into the office when you're done, which is great. No advertisers complaining. And the 47 Daily is a daily news update that's pre-recorded. It's bright and early in the morning. It's everything you need to know from the White House, directly from the White House. So there's no spin, there's no media rhetoric or narrative. If it doesn't come from the administration, we don't report on it.
Yeah, so there's a lot more freedom. I was going to ask you that, too, like what a major difference was between radio, because you were in radio and you were doing it in Florida, and now you're doing strictly podcasting, I believe. It sounds like you're just doing strictly podcasting. So what do you find? Do you find it more challenging to do the podcasting instead of just a radio?
No, because I don't have to deal with people. It's great. It's just me and my wife here at my podcast studio. Basically, with the radio, we were syndicated nationally. We were in 6 markets. We were in Dayton, Ohio, and we'd go up there every now and then. The people there were so amazing. But we did that for years until the corporation that owned us sold out to another corporation who decided that we were way too conservative and entertaining for their liking. So they asked us not to be on the radio anymore. And of course, you know, at that point, I could say, all right, I could go work for some other corporate, you know, sleazeball who doesn't know good radio or conservative politics or is just trying to appease and placate the advertisers instead of the actual listeners. Or I could just do what I know how to do best, and that is create my own content and distribute it directly. And so for the last 2 years, we actually launched Mark Kaye Saves the Republic on July 15th, 2024 from the Republican National Convention on the floor. And it was an amazing way to rebrand and to relaunch. And we've been going strong now for just about we had our 2-year anniversary just last week. So things are going great. Yeah, we're loving it.
So that Mark Kaye Saves the Republic, is that primarily your congressional podcast, or that's just a conservative podcast that you do, right?
Yeah, that's just my conservative podcast that I started on. It used to be the Mark Kaye Show. The radio station refused to turn that over to me, so, you know, we rebranded a little bit. But Mark Kaye Saves the Republic is conservative talk, and every day we talk about whatever conservative listeners want to know about, need to know about. We cut through all the BS. We tell you the truth. We go through all the headlines. We play the clips from The View and laugh at them together. All the great stuff. And that's something, you know, like I said, it's very similar to what we did on the radio, and that one is live, so you never know what's going to happen. A lot of fun, a lot of energy, and a lot lot of great information.
All right, it's great to have you. I'm going to play this clip here. This is about
Democrats
your campaign here.
Crazy.
Will you condone violently?
Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
Shut down the Senate!
And the Republicans are lazy.
Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore.
And nobody in Congress is actually working for you. And so I am raising my hand to volunteer. I, Mark Kaye, am hereby running for Congress in 2026. Who's going to show up at the Capitol building every single day ready to fight so that we can save our republic? This guy? This is our current Congressman, John H. Rutherford. The H stands for humiliating. Congressman Rutherford claims to be a Republican, but he has voted with the Democrats 50% of the time. He even voted with the Democrats when they were trying to put President Donald Trump in jail.
Not a joke.
Liz Cheney has a more conservative voting record than John Rutherford.
Okay, so it sounds like, I don't know who John Rutherford is. That's your opponent, but it doesn't sound like he does a whole lot, So that's a good, I got that right off your website there. So that's something that you're using as a tool for your campaign and all that. And you're in the 5th district in Jacksonville, Florida. So how's that going, Mark? So you got what? August 18th, I believe, is your primary. You'll be going up against this guy who you claim does nothing, right? He's about as lazy as it gets and everything. So how's it going?
I mean, I only claim it because it's true. It's going really well. In fact, we're 30 days out. It's 30 days from today is the Florida primary. Tomorrow, if you're not a Republican, you still have till July 20th if you live in Florida to register Republican. But the 5th district is a very red district. It's bright red. So the primary, whoever wins the Republican primary is going to be the next congressperson. It's one of those districts where if you can skate through the primary, then you know that you're just going to be putting your hand on the Bible in January and serving another 2 years. And that's kind of what John Rutherford has been able to do for a long time. He was our sheriff in Jacksonville. He then decided to go into Congress. We all thought to represent us, but it turns out it was just his retirement plan. He's one of those guys who went to Congress, joined the Appropriations Committee, found out where all the money was going to be spent, and then he invested heavily so that in the last 10 years, he's been able to multiply his income from about $150,000 to about $5 million. You don't do that, giving speeches. Yeah. The other thing is he sits on the Ethics Committee, which is really handy because over the last 10 years, he's been brought up with 152 violations of the Congressional Stock Trading Act, which go to the Ethics Committee. But being on the Ethics Committee, guess what? They all somehow just got dismissed. So there's a little bit of corruption that we've been investigating with him. There's a lot of questionable votes. He's voted with the Democrats a lot. He's sent money to Ukraine. He voted to give the FBI headquarters a brand new overhaul for $1 billion 2 weeks after the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago illegally. He's voted to fund the Jack Smith investigation. It's really wild. And the thing is, he keeps quiet. He doesn't do town halls. He doesn't do any media. So nobody really knows what he's doing. And that's why we're running against him. So we can A, shed some light on that, and B, replace him with somebody who's actually going to represent the people in Florida a lot better.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's a lot of congressmen like that. We have that same problem here in Ohio. We have the congressmen. I mean, they get in, they're just there. They're in a red district. In Ohio, the way it's all divvied up is that you've either got a pure red district or a pure blue district. And there are very few. There might be 2 seats, congressional seats that are really up for grabs, but the others are there for the taking. Now, here's something interesting. I don't know if did you ever hear of Brandon Herrera?
Yes.
Okay, so he was a YouTuber known as the AK guy, a gun AK guy, and he had he had millions of subscribers, but he ended up winning his congressional seat. It took him 2 tries, and he beat Tony Gonzalez. So you're familiar with that. So Tony Gonzalez was a Texas congressman, and this guy was a YouTuber like you. And he went up against him. So this was like kind of going against the grain totally in that you're saying, I'm not going to go with the good old boys club. I'm not going to work my way up, which, there's pros and cons to that. But with the social media influence today, you can generate a lot of power and influence that way. Is that what you're doing here? Are you testing the waters in Congress or maybe or is this run? Do you have a legitimate chance of winning in this run?
Oh, I mean, I always tell my family, do they always say, is there a legitimate chance? I go, absolutely there is. Because what happens is the longer that John Rutherford's in office, the more people dislike him. In fact, my son and I were out canvassing this weekend. And I would meet people, I'd knock on doors and I'd hand my little flyer. I'd say, hey, I'm Mark Kaye. I'm running against John Rutherford. And they would look at me and go, you're running against John Rutherford? I go, yeah. They'd say, you have my vote, without knowing anything other than I'm not him.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And that happened, in the last campaign, there was a woman named Mara Macy who was running against him. And I'd really, he'd been on my show. We did not like the way that he handled himself during the Jim Jordan Speaker of the House debacle. You may remember when Matt Gaetz, who's also from Florida, he was a big fan of ours, big friend of our show. Matt Gaetz called for Kevin McCarthy to step down. They basically evacuated him from the speakership. And then there was a battle for who was going to be next. And we all loved Jim Jordan because, he's from Ohio. He was a great, representative of America First values. And everyone on the show thought it was going to be Jim Jordan. He was getting a majority of the votes, but just not enough. There were about 10 or 12 Congress people who just refused to vote for Jim Jordan. And we dug into it. We realized John Rutherford was one of them. So we had him on the show. And I said to him, why aren't you voting for Jim Jordan? Everybody's been voting. Everyone wants you to vote for Jim Jordan. You're voting for Steve Scalise. And he told us on the show, he goes, look, if I vote for Jim Jordan, he becomes Speaker of the House, then Matt Gaetz wins. And I had no idea what he meant by that. But then I soon realized, he doesn't like Matt Gaetz. So instead of representing the people in Florida, he's going to vote against Matt Gaetz. And that's when we started to support Mara Macy. And she gave a good run for it. She got a lot of people primed and ready. She had a pretty good, decent following and a decent showing, but she didn't have enough votes to win. So when I went back to her 2 years ago, I said, are you going to run again? She goes, no, I'm not going to do it. I said, why not? She said, the only person that can beat this incumbent is somebody who's very conservative and has a lot of name recognition in the market. And I looked at her and I said, who would that be, if not you? She goes, well, you would qualify because you've been on the radio for 20 years in this market. And sure enough, the name recognition does come in handy. To your point about social media, it's not just once you've been elected, but right. Brandon Herrera, anybody who has a following, you need name recognition. It's just the name of the game now. Unless people know who you are when they go in there and they look at that ballot, they're not going to vote for you. And the ability that people have with social media, podcasting, even on the news, just by being on the radio for 20 years, that's way ahead of the game. So now it's just letting people know, hey, I'm running for Congress. I'm conservative, and you should definitely vote for me. But the longer he's been in office, the easier I think it is now for us to win. So yeah, we've got a great shot.
Yeah, I think because somebody feels like they know you. Even if they've never, if he's seen you enough as a podcaster, then I know that guy. It's just like if you see enough of these signs, these yard signs, and then you see that same name on the ballot. Oh, yeah, I know this person. Right. But it works. It does work. I want to get the commission here. John Pleshnik in with us here. So he knows a few things about running. He's the Lake County Commissioner. John, how are you?
Hello. It's great to be on.
All right, so what would you, if you could say anything to Mark Kaye, what would you say to him?
I would say up against a long-term incumbent, the single most important thing is just to push your name. It sounds like Mark Kaye is already a brand, and you're not getting creative and even going with the full name. You're just pushing the name that folks know. Hopefully they recognize the full name on the ballot, and you double down. You don't hold back as you go into the end. I've seen too many people who lost by 2%, 1%, 0.5% because they kind of let up on the last month. They say, well, I've done all I can do. It is what it is. It'll be what it'll be. And if they had just doubled down and went a little harder at the end, they would have won. You don't know whether you're 2 points behind, 2 points ahead, or 20 points either way. But you don't want to be the day after Election Day looking back and going, I was only 0.5% down. If I hit 1,000 more doors, if I called 1,000 more people, I'd be there. You just have to close strong. You've obviously had your campaign and your strategy throughout. You don't change things midstream. You just close strong.
Yeah, that's really good advice and everything like that. Yeah, but by the way, Kaye is really your full last name, isn't it? It is Mark Kaye. Let me find it here. Go right here.
That's right.
Yeah, Kaye, Kaye, Mark Kaye. Yeah. So
well, that is fortuitous.
It's his actual last name, right?
Well, I found out from a consultant. They said that just because alphabetically I'm number one on the ballot. And they go, that's 5% of the vote right there, because there's 5% of the people that are going to walk in, they're just going to circle in the first name. So just by having the first, now if there were a Davis in the race, that wouldn't work. But because it's just the two of us and I'm alphabetically ahead of John Rutherford, I get 5% of the vote supposedly.
See, in Ohio, they would actually rotate by alphabetical order. So in each precinct, you'd have a different ballot, so you don't get that advantage just based on A, B, C, D. But fortunately for you, Florida doesn't have that rule.
Thank God.
There you go. All righty. So, best of luck with the congressional race and everything like that, and keep us informed and all that. I got to talk about your right pen. Can we talk about your right pen? Can we
Absolutely.
talk about the pen that writes? And it's the greatest invention. And I've got to give you, and I'm going to get Kent in on this too, because Kent's real familiar with it. It seems like the greatest invention of all time. And let me just say this: what is Right Pen? It's an AI-powered media analysis tool, and it was launched by you. And users, they take headlines of articles or screenshots or social media posts, and then what your tool does is it will mark it up, right? It plays like it's an English teacher. It fixes everything. If you have a problem with it, let me go to this here 1 second. I'll play this here.
Midas Touch wrote, Donald Trump's recent public appearances continue to raise serious questions. He has repeatedly appeared unable to walk in a straight line. His hands have shown visible discoloration covered by heavy makeup, and his speech has become increasingly erratic. I don't notice any of that, but here's what Right Pen's going to do. Right Pen is going to go through and it's going to expose Midas Touch and his lies in real time. It's going to cross out the lies and it's going to replace it with the truth. Here we go. Donald Trump's recent public appearances continue to raise media obsession. That is exactly right. The media is obsessed. He has repeatedly appeared unable to walk, blah, blah, and his speech has become sharp and direct. So now you can save this and you can replace it. Now, here's the other thing, too. It also tells you what this guy left out. And this guy leaves out a lot of stuff. Midas Touch omits that Trump has held packed rallies, lengthy press conferences, and bilateral meetings with world leaders, none of which suggests the physical or cognitive decline being implied. The Post presents speculation and cherry-picked observations as established medical facts.
You're going through
with
what
no
Right
sourcing,
Pen does
doctor
here.
testimony, or clinical basis. Yeah. Trump's recent public schedule has been among the most demanding of any political figure currently active.
All right. So that was you, or that was not an AI generated you. That was a
that was the actual me.
That was the actual you.
Yeah.
At an earlier time, right? You can't tell anymore if it's AI generated or not. You know, it's all looks the same and everything. All right, so Right Pen, give us now that we kind of got it to see what it does and everything. Explain it to us, if you would, please.
Sure. So basically, and because I, use a lot of AI tools for my show, and the interesting thing is, fact checking has changed a lot because what CNN and the New York Times and these fake news media outlets do is they tell you some of the truth, but not all of it. They leave out the parts that fit their narrative so that you read the thing. It's mostly true, but if you only knew the whole story, you'd actually realize, oh, this is all just bogus. So what you can't do is you can't fact check a fact that wasn't put into the article. So AI, the Right Pen AI, goes in and finds out what they left out and inserts it. So then you get the whole story. And I started using it for my own show. And then other people were like, that's really cool. So I built it out. And the red pen effect is just something, like you said, my high school English teacher used to do that all the time. In fact, if you go to our website, rightpen.ai, you click this red button, it shows you. Here's a Donald. This was from the other day. Trump promoted companies on Truth Social days after buying their stocks. This is from CNN. Now, what it looks like is like CNN saying Donald Trump pumped and dumped stocks on Truth Social. But if you click the button, Right Pen goes through, it does the whole thing, it analyzes it, and then it tells you, look, Trump, he just posted about companies. He didn't buy the stocks. His independent investment manager bought their stocks. And then it tells you what they left out, that's also not against the law. They never mentioned that Trump posts about all kinds of companies, not just ones he holds investments in. And nobody brought up that the president's public statements move markets, even when they're not. Every president moves markets. Everybody knows that. Barack Obama, Joe Biden, when Joe Biden would fall down the stairs, the markets would move. So what CNN tried to do was take a story, leave out those important facts, and make you think Donald Trump was a grifter, because that's their new catchphrase. They've abandoned racist. Now they want to call him a grifter. And Right Pen will rewrite the headline and give you all of those bullet points so you can argue back, so that you can post the truth, and so that you can really know what's going on and who's trying to manipulate you.
So how does a person get that Right Pen?
Great
it's an app,
question.
Right? It's an app.
Yeah, it's the web app, so you can get on your phone, your internet. We just added a Chrome extension, and you go to rightpen.ai. RIGHTPEN.AI, and you can get the sample I just showed you. You can test it out for yourself. You can roll through it, and it's really fantastic. It's a lot of fun, and we have a private Facebook group with members who are always posting the lies that they're finding. So it's really a great thing.
Hey, I got to get one of your good friends on here tonight. I got to get Kent on. Hey, Kent, how you doing, man? Now you two are best of buddies and everything. It's good to see you, man. You're out vacationing in Kings Island, in Cincinnati.
I'm here in Dayton.
Yeah,
Cincinnati.
So what's going on? What do you got for Mark here?
Well, no. I just appreciate him coming on. I just wanted to. Basically, how I met him, and I think I was the one that kind of started getting Mark information and all that. I was, after Rush passed away, I was trying to find someone else conservative either on the radio or someone to fill that void at that hour. And actually, it was funny and how much we use Facebook right now. I found Mark on Facebook, started to listen to him on Rumble, on YouTube, on Facebook, and then things, just kept on. As he was building other means, he also was, trying to help out podcasters. And so I basically, took a couple of the ways of getting some information from him. And school was one of those means of getting, and I recommend, there's a link in the description below of school for Mark, affiliate for us. It is probably the best podcasting community, understanding how to do this, from even monetization ways. And he backs it up. Like, we will do a Zoom call like we're kind of doing tonight, every week, and he backs up his numbers as we're doing the Zoom call. So take advantage of that. I mean, if you can click on it, and if you're trying to build up a foundation, a podcast, YouTube, marketing, take the course. And there's a lot of modules. There's a lot of the AI that Mark's talking about right now in the community that you can build off of. And I mean, everything that if we're,
I got an idea here. Yeah, because that's good. All right, so let's talk. Let's just zoom into that for a minute, if we could, Mark. Let's talk about your school then. I mean, this is also really good. So, what is the school? And how would it benefit someone?
Well, so the history of it is, I mean, and you know this because you're a conservative in the media. Before Donald Trump returned to office, when Joe Biden was in office, and of course during the COVID years, being a conservative on social media was just, it was hellacious. It was the worst thing to be. Demonetization, shadow banning. I interviewed Rand Paul back in 2021. He was live on my radio show, but we were broadcasting on YouTube. And Rand Paul, who is not only a United States senator, but also a doctor, said masks don't work, and YouTube shut down my channel and his as well. That's how bad things were. So making a living as a conservative and using social media was almost impossible. And I had 5 TikTok accounts shut down and 2 Facebook pages. So after I kind of learned how to navigate, I would, reach out to other conservatives and talk to other conservatives and teach them kind of how to successfully be on social media and be a conservative and protect your assets. And then that kind of grew into a community of conservative entrepreneurs, which then grew into a community of conservative entrepreneurs who were trying to, be online, doing stuff, growing their business, getting new leads. And then when Donald Trump got reelected, everything changed. And Facebook, all of a sudden, Mark Zuckerberg's at the White House and they're buddy, and Amazon's no longer shutting down your accounts. And even YouTube is much more conservative friendly. So it was like the heyday. And so now the group that we have now, it's called GAIN, Golden Age Influencers. And our GAIN community has about 40 or 50 conservative entrepreneurs who are podcasters and live streamers and business owners and producers and We have a guy who just joined from Tampa. He joins he owns a water filtration company, but he also has a couple podcasts. And like Kent said, everything that I do every single day, every time there's an algorithmic change, every time there's something you need to watch out for, or a new tactic that I've learned that can help you grow in the conservative community, I share it in the group, and we all grow together.
Yeah, right. I know a little bit about it and everything like that. So if somebody, how does a person again get involved with this? This is a school in order to learn better podcasting, right? And how to do it more. Because we've gotten some tips from you too. Kent is Kent is on all the time. I think once a week he's talking to you through the Zoom. But to get pointers to help, because this is not as easy as people think.
Sure.
Doing podcasting's not that easy. It's not. There's not only the technical side. We can have problems with, like I had problems today. One of the guys that was going to help out with the show couldn't connect for one reason or another, or Zoom problems, audio problems, and you name it. And then content. You have to have the content. It's you got to do thumbnails. And the competition in podcasting is so ferocious. We're trying our best to increase views. Everybody is, and that's kind of what you would help with the school, right? Is that kind of what you guys would do to help?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we do everything. What we've done now is what we've really found out is, podcasting is just a tool. What really gets you where you want to go is your authority position. And the best thing is that a podcast is the best way to launch your authority position because, it's a show. There's something about a podcast. It just has this gleam to it. People don't look at it like a Facebook page or a LinkedIn. They look at it as an actual show, and podcasters seem to be elevated in the social media realm, even though it's just another form of social media, but you post on Facebook, you host a show. So it's much more exciting. And if you want to elevate your authority, no matter what business you're in, whether it's real estate or you're a doctor, I mean, we have a guy who has a company that basically he takes out people on Bugattis that are actually motorboats, but they looks like you're cruising around Florida in a Bugatti. It's really fantastic. So we've got all people from all walks of life, but basically you're elevating your authority through the content you create, and podcasting, creating your own show, is the best way to do that.
I got you. Let me get. I got another guest here. Let me get John. Hey, John. So. Well, you're on the podcast all the time. Now, John Pleshnik is an exceptional speaker, even though he won't admit it. He's an exceptional speaker. Now, I'm telling you what, he's one of those guys that if you get in front of a group of people, a crowd, he knows how to just ring them in and keep them there. So he's got that rare talent and ability and stuff. But hey, anything you want to add to this?
Well, it impresses me to hear the same names over and over again. It really is a small conservative world with the very sincere people. You hear the name Rush Limbaugh, and I'll never forget when I was in law school. Out of the blue, Rush reads my entire op-ed in a law school newspaper over the air the day Terry Schiavo died. He really turned a lot of us in the right direction, double entendre, pun intended. And then you hear the name Rand Paul, obviously coming out of his father's legacy. Ron Paul, Congressman Ron Paul was the last speaker that I brought to Duke when I was in college Republicans. And you may not, or you may know this, but both Rand and Ron Paul have their medical degrees from Duke University. So, you hear the same names over and over again from sincere conservatives like Rush Limbaugh, Ron Paul, Rand Paul. And even though the technology's changed, the spirit hasn't. We just have to adapt to new ways of reaching folks, because the mainstream media, the fake news, the left wing has always had an advantage because they've controlled most of the levers in the traditional media. And I do think, in a sense, we have kind of a golden age in the news, because more and more, as non-centralized media becomes relevant, like Ohio Political News, like podcasts, we have an opportunity to be on even ground. And frankly, we're the ones speaking the truth. If we have an even ground in terms of being able to reach the public, we'll win every time.
Yeah, it's true. The party that can, they call it They call it social media, but it's really just the media now. I mean, that is what everyone's doing. They're looking at their phones. You can walk into my living room, the TV will be on, but every single person in my home is looking at their phones and not paying attention to whatever's on the tube. So they call it social media, but it's just really the media. And you're right. If you're not on it, you're not getting through. And it can be the same exact message that it's been from Rush Limbaugh, from, my good buddy Herman Cain. May he rest in peace as well. All these conservative thinkers, the message is the same, but the delivery system has changed.
Would you say that the media, I know television, I think television is going downhill because, like you said, I don't even turn on the TV anymore. I literally do not even turn it on. So I'm glued to the social media with the cell phone like everybody else. But I think radio as well is kind of a dying breed. Do you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, well, the radio companies have destroyed radio. Well, they never wanted to embrace new technology. I mean, when I was there, I was the first one to launch a radio show, which I thought was, a great way to reach new viewer. And in fact, my bosses didn't even know what was happening. We were getting phone calls because we would broadcast the phone number and people would call in and they'd be listening to the show. And all of a sudden we were in 6 markets, but all of a sudden we started getting calls from Las Vegas and Portland and Toronto, Canada. And, they were like, wait, how are all these people calling you from all over? I said, I'm broadcasting live on Facebook. They had no idea what was going on, but it multiplied our audience 100 times overnight. Radio stations typically are threatened by that. And instead of embracing it, they fight it. And now, I mean, you can go online any day and see that there's hundreds and hundreds of people in the radio industry getting laid off. They're terminated. Their jobs are disappearing because these companies were not able to assimilate or not willing to assimilate. But that model doesn't work anymore. Consumer demand is we want it when we want it, and we want to pause it when we pause it, and we want to go back and listen to something we liked if we want to hear it again. And radio doesn't allow you to do any of those things. You can't pause the radio. You can't rewind the radio. You can't hit a button and share your radio show with your friend and say, listen to this. It's the greatest thing ever. And that's why those people that are clutching to those older technologies are going to find themselves, out of luck, as they say. There's another word before out of luck, but I'm not going to say that one.
Yeah, I agree with you because when you think about the old days with radio, and at one time, radio was everything. If you were on the radio at one time, you were big. You were the big shot. But when you think about it, I will not listen to radio, and here's why. Number one, I have no idea what the guy's going to talk about. Number two, there's so many damn commercials and they're long. When you get to commercials on podcasts and stuff like that, they're short, but on the radio they just never end. And then they give you, then you go to the weather and you go to the traffic updates. But I have no idea. It's so weird. But I know that this guy's going to be talking, and I have no idea what the topic is going to be. With podcasting, it's so different. Every show is right there. You got the thumbnail. You know exactly what it's going to be about. And I don't know how we ever operated the old way, but there's no going back. But
and I'll give you another reason. Reason. The majority of even conservative talk radio stations in this country are owned by liberal entertainment and or investment companies. And there's one company left that's actually a conservative Christian-owned company that owns talk radio, but they're a smaller player in the large market. So you're listening to conservative talk radio, but it's owned and operated, and also the oversight comes from Hollywood liberals, Chicago liberals, New York City, Wall Street liberals, all of whom own these radio stations. And if you say or do something that is too conservative, you'll be gone. You'll be gone.
Right. Kind of like what happened with YouTube. If you said anything against COVID-19.
That's right. Yep.
All right. So, hey, I want to wish you best of luck with the congressional race. Okay, we'll be pulling for you. And with right pen, I gotta get that right pen. And with your school. So, it's wonderful to hear everything that you're up to. I want to let Kent, do you have any last words for your hero here? Your hero.
I just want to thank Mark again to come on. I know we've been trying to get him on for a while. Take advantage of the different ways that you can, reach out to Mark and there's a lot of insights that he can share. Good luck on the campaign. I know, I just, want to thank him because he kind of, OPN is kind of everything I show or do or anything. It comes off of what Mark is, sharing, and it works. That's what I would think the best thing about going into a community like Gaines and learning how to really do podcasting, and also having a backup plan for your podcast, whatever that is, like what, exactly what Right Pen is for Mark as a backup to the podcasting, because it is tough to do podcasting and keep going. But thanks, Mark, for coming on to the show. Appreciate
Guys,
it.
thanks. Yeah, no, but thank you all for having me. John, thank you too. It was amazing to meet you, and this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, thanks again. We appreciate it, and hopefully we can have you on again. Okay.
Absolutely. Oh, look at that! Yay! Absolutely.
Hey, I'll clean that up later out of your studio.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks again, Mark. Appreciate it. All right. Have a good one. All right. It was good to see him. We might have another guest coming on. You've heard of Ron Young, Commissioner Ron Young, John?
Yes, indeed. I was very honored to serve with Commissioner Young myself, and I've been volunteering for his campaigns for years. So great friend, great colleague, one of the most respected men in Ohio.
Okay, so there's an event coming up. Now, Ron might be joining us, and I say might, and here's why. Okay, I have a good excuse if he doesn't. Wait a minute. The reason is my son got married yesterday. Okay, so this is a big event, a life-changing event and everything. And I was very, very tied up prior to the weekend and everything. So the communication kind of got lost between Ron and myself, because I was supposed to send him the link, and I finally did send it to him today, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to keep an eye out. But anyhow, if he doesn't join, we will have him on again. But this is one of the things we were going to talk about here, is this concert. And I noticed that John Paleshnik's name is on this. Are you aware of the free concert, John? You must be.
I am indeed. I was very honored when Commissioner Young asked if I'd be involved with Living Hope Ohio. This is really a labor of love on Ron's part. After serving as state representative for 16 years, county commissioner for nearly 4 years, Ron took a well-deserved retirement, but he just felt something on his heart that he had more work yet to do, even though he's 80 years of age. And he's really put himself into evangelization. He's gone to Lakeland Community College, which is across the street from his church, Willow Hill Baptist Church in Willoughby. And he's been going to the cafeteria day after day, just asking the students, asking the kids, do you know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? And it takes a lot of courage in a society that shames evangelization, that shames spreading the gospel as being intrusive or corny, for someone like Ron to just put it out there and say, hey, I'm a Christian. I want to talk to you more about my faith. Are you willing to listen? And he's done that now for several months at Lakeland, but he felt that he really needed to expand that youth ministry with an event that would bring people together to share the gospel, to look at how Christianity has blessed the United States of America, how it blesses us today, and how it can bless your life if you realize Jesus is your Savior right here, right now. And so he wanted to have an event that would combine gospel music with evangelization in a sense of, and here's how he asked me to be involved, a sense of how Christianity, how Judeo-Christian values have been core to the formation of the United States as we know it today. And that's why this very special event is on September 17th, otherwise known as Constitution Day, because Christianity, while it's for the whole world, has had a special impact on the shining city on a hill, has had a special impact with the founding of the United States and the amazing freedoms and liberties that we enjoy today, because we understand that these are God-given rights. They're not simply laws that the government giveth and the government may taketh away. We have God-given rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness here in the United States. And this event, Living Hope Ohio, is going to be a special opportunity at the Lake Metro Parks in Lake County, the farm park specifically, to celebrate our shared heritage in the United States, but first and foremost, the gospel of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Wow. Okay, so I was not aware that Ron was preaching the gospel so much, which is a wonderful thing. but I had heard that he was a previous commissioner, so I thought that we would be speaking mostly on political terms. And I did know that he had that faith event, but it sounds like he's getting out. You're saying he's getting out to the younger generation now and doing some real hardcore preaching about Jesus, and that's pretty wonderful. Yeah.
He is, and you have to understand the miraculous path that Commissioner Young has walked. Back in 2020, he was suffering from cancer complicated by a COVID infection. And his doctors gave him a less than 1 out of 3 chance, of surviving. And frankly, even with surviving, the odds of living a healthy life much beyond were not good. Nonetheless, Ron never missed the commissioners' meeting. He was there virtually if he wasn't there in person, which the law allowed at the time. And he soldiered through with the faith that he still had more work to do, but that it wasn't politics, that it wasn't government. So he stepped aside from that, and he's just devoted himself more and more to his church, more and more to his faith and his family. And once again, it's hard for the bravest of us to just walk up to someone and say, Jesus Christ is Lord. And Ron is doing that every day in so many different ways. And this really, Living Hope Ohio, is the culmination of that ministry that Ron just felt called to give. I mean, at his age, most folks are on the beach in Florida. Most folks are retired and enjoying themselves, and Ron certainly has the means to do that. But he's really dedicating himself to the Christian faith and to making a difference here in Northeast Ohio, and I'm really proud. I'm really humbled to call Ron a friend. So when he asked me to help in a small way with this event, I'm really excited.
Yeah, the whole faith thing. I'm gonna get Kent in here. So that's interesting though, because we actually started podcasting as a faith podcast. If you remember, way back when. we were doing faith shows. We were doing podcast shows on the faith, but that was quite a few years ago, and the technology back then was not very good. It was always freezing up. I remember that. I remember it. It was always just, we would be freezing. We called it the Vid Blaster days. It was some really bad, corny, crappy technology, but that was all that there was. Nowadays, if you want to do any kind of live streaming and stuff like we do now, it's heads and shoulders above that. But so that's pretty interesting there too. And you have something like go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, with a fiat ministry, encouraging all to say yes to Jesus Christ, that's what we started, and that's how we kind of connected Joe. So this is a great event that, the gentleman is doing, and I think any kind of way of spreading the word and, sharing it, and then using the social media if you can, that's just a lot more to it that you can, share it. And that's great that he's doing that, and hopefully maybe we could cover it or do something for him too.
I hope you do. Yeah. I hope you do, Kent, because this is a message that should be shared with all of Ohio, really all of the country. We need to stop being so shy about our faith. We heard it said by no less than Vice President J.D. Vance at Charlie Kirk's funeral that he was always worried that if he expressed his faith, people would accuse him of using it for political gain or just being political. He said, you know what? I have to stop being embarrassed of my faith. It's better if I'm a little embarrassed and I stumble over myself a bit and say the truth, that I love Jesus Christ, that he is my Savior, than if I'm worried about being embarrassed and I keep my mouth shut. Maybe I will fall all over myself. Maybe I will look political. But so be it. It's more important to preach the gospel than it is to worry about being perfect, because Lord knows none of us are perfect. And I really took that as inspirational from J.D. Vance, that he recognized what a lot of us wrestle with, because we don't want to look like we're trying to politicize our faith, but at the same time, you can't keep the candle under a container. You can't put a blanket over the light. You have to let it shine. And yeah, we're imperfect, and we're not going to state the gospel perfectly because, we're imperfect human beings, but we are called to preach. Every one of us. It's not just priests or ministers or bishops or popes. This directive was given to every single person who follows Christ, that we are called to spread the gospel.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, because one thing that it's really beneficial for my family is back in the day, just watching anybody in a restaurant, there's no pray. I mean, we pray at the dinner table and out in public before we're done, or before we're going to eat dinner at a restaurant. We pray as a family. Doing the kind of the cross in front of, it shows something, or if you have a cross, necklace or something, because there's a lot of ways. One thing that's coming up, Bishop Sheen, as a Catholic, for any Christian, he's going to be hopefully a saint soon. But he was talking about podcasting, and back in the day with TV, he was the most watched person on television ever, and it was a faith-based program, Bishop Sheen, and he was always talking about the family first. And I think a lot of these problems, even with the abolished property taxes and getting help with school, I personally think the teachers have. I know I have a lot of teachers in my family. My wife's a teacher. My mother was a teacher for 35 years. My aunts were doing a lot of work in public schools, and they, that was one of the things that I always were thankful for, was that faith base that I had with my family, with my mom, and then now with my family. And then to be also nurtured in a school foundation, where I think sometimes where we're getting these numbers, it's tough to say that everybody is in the same, those averages of numbers for scores, and I mean it's different for all families. But if you could bring back the faith in some way to all of these different situations, I think it would help, because I started Fiat because number one, I did live streaming, but then also I wanted to learn about my faith, and what a easier way to learn more about your faith than having people that know a lot more about your the faith come on to podcasts and share it. And for this event, I think it's a great way. And I hope OPN, I think that's one, as a conservative network, we're also a faith-based network too.
I got an idea, and that is, okay, we were doing Fiat back in the Vid Blaster days, and of course you had bad technology and everything, and they weren't reaching very many people and stuff. But a lot of we got out of doing that because it was really hard to generate an audience through a faith-based program, and much easier to generate an audience through politics. But if you can bring faith into the politics, that's probably the key, right? Well, would you agree with that, John? So if you really want to preach the gospel, take it to where the people are. Because if you're doing it on a podcast show that's a faith-based podcast show, let's just say, but yet you're not getting any viewers, it's not really accomplishing anything. So if you can take it to build a platform and then get into the faith a little bit, that's probably the key. Would you agree or not?
I absolutely agree. And there's been a shyness, there's been a reticence of following our faith to its natural political conclusions, because let's be real, whatever the denomination, whatever the religion, churches and places of worship are worried about losing constituency. They're worried about people walking out the doors because they're offended. And we need to remember, particularly as Christians, that Jesus wasn't worried about offending people. The same person who gave us the Beatitudes, the same divine person who told us that the meek would inherit the earth, walked into the synagogue and flipped the tables and said, "Get out of my Father's house," to the money changers. So Jesus certainly is the highest embodiment of love and mercy that the human condition could imagine, and then some. But Jesus also reflected strength and a willingness to address corruption and wrongdoing in the present day, even if it made people feel very, very uncomfortable. And so our ministers, our priests, our rabbis today need to remember that when faith intersects with politics, we can't shy away from that reality. If our politicians are doing things that are by all standards wrong, evil, and contradictory to our faith, it needs to be called out. And sometimes we feel good calling them out, and sometimes we feel nervous, uncomfortable about it because we realize that we might be on the wrong side of an issue. But either way, you can't separate faith and politics. This is this mythos that people try to attribute to Thomas Jefferson, the separation of church and state. Well, President Thomas Jefferson is the one who coined that term in a letter to the Danbury Baptist Association. And so he's the person we should look to understand what it meant. And his understanding of separation of church and state, same as all the founding fathers and mothers, was that England had a problem. That England establishing an official state religion and saying join or else was something we needed to ban and abolish. And that's exactly what the Establishment Clause in the Constitution does. It prohibits the government from establishing a state religion. That's what separation of church and state means. But by no means did Thomas Jefferson believe that religion had no place in public life, that religion had no place in government or in public school. In fact, when he was president of the United States, Jefferson used taxpayer dollars to build Catholic churches on Indian reservations. Now, bear in mind, Jefferson wasn't Catholic. He just thought that any Christian church was better than none. And he had no problem using federal dollars to build churches. So for people who say that Jefferson would have disapproved of prayer in schools or opening a government meeting, like a commissioner's meeting, in prayer, which we do, by the way, anyone who thinks he would have objected to those things has not studied history. There is no such thing as an absolute ban on faith in public life. Separation of church and state rightly means the state should not tell you what to believe. And I think that all of us are on that page, but the idea that we should ban religion and faith from public life, that comes from somewhere else. Maybe the big guy downstairs. It does not come from Thomas Jefferson.
Well, if you look at public schools, too, let's take a look at that for a minute. You don't say a prayer. I think at one time you used to say a prayer. At one time, I think you used to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't even know if they do that anymore. But they've completely taken God out. Now, if you want to have a parochial school, let's say, then they don't want you getting any kind of state funding or anything because separation of church and state.
Once again, it's a myth. It's a myth, Joe. And it's a myth that we need to push back on. You want to be a serious student of history? You want to make arguments based on precedent? I'm all about it. But get your facts straight. And Thomas Jefferson believed that it was not only permissible, but a good idea for the government to spend taxpayer dollars to build churches. This is not a man who would say, don't open a meeting, don't open a day of school with a prayer. He'd say, let's use federal taxpayer dollars to build churches.
Okay, so what would you say now in this current day and age when a teachers union and stuff would come barking at you and condemning any kind of a prayer or anything like that? And then if you do set up a parochial school or something, they don't want you getting any kind of funding. So how do you attack that?
Honestly, Joe, I think we need to be a little bit more forceful as conservatives. Liberals have no problem going off the chain and off the charts, even when they know nothing. When we absolutely have our receipts, our citations in hand, we're nervous to say the truth. We need to stop being embarrassed. We need to start being more forceful. And if someone says something ridiculous, like Thomas Jefferson would object to prayer in public life or prayer in schools, we need to say, go back to school. We're not even going to have this conversation. That's ridiculous. That's like saying George Washington was a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's nonsense. And if someone says something nonsensical, you need to call it out, have a good laugh, and say, go back to school, And in 4 years, when you have a history degree, at least one that teaches you something, we'll talk. We need to be a little more forceful. We need to be a little bit more powerful in our condemnation of nonsense. A real debate we should have with respect, agree to disagree if we must. We should have civil discourse. When someone says something asinine that is just contrary to fact, you got to call it out as such. We can't be so polite. Conservatives have allowed liberals to rewrite history. I mean, the fact that liberals to this day try to pretend that the Republican Party was in favor of slavery when it was founded to abolish it, it's nonsense like that. We need to say, that doesn't pass the laugh test. We're not going to do that.
Right. Okay, so Ron Young now. Here's a guy that's, you said he's in his 80s. I've never met him. So we're going to have him on the show. He hasn't called in. So like I said, there's a miscommunication and stuff. We'll get him on again and we'll talk to him. But he's in his 80s. This gives, I have a lot of respect for somebody like that who is a county commissioner, who is in politics. He's not an ordained minister or anything like that, but yet he feels the call to go out and start preaching the gospel to the younger generation, right? Or is he preaching it to everybody?
Well, I think he's preaching to everyone, but he's really dedicated himself by going to Lakeland Community College, hanging out in the cafeteria, and just putting himself out there. He's dedicated himself to the youth, certainly. And I can tell you, this is a nonprofit event. This is absolutely free on September 17th, Living Hope, Ohio. Ron Young is spending all his own money on it. He's not making anything. This is him just donating his time, donating his money, because he feels so strongly that this is a chance to reach new people, to re-inflame the faith in those who might have fallen off, to reinforce the rest of us who believe in Jesus, but maybe we haven't been as brave as we should be. As J.D. Vance said, maybe we've been a little too embarrassed to evangelize the way the Bible has called us to. And we need to be reminded of our obligation as Christians, because, as you say, Joe, Ron Young's not an ordained minister. He's not a priest or a bishop. He's just a Christian. And he feels called, he feels on his heart that he has to say, he has to do more to bring people to Christ. And it's humbling to see someone who could, once again, just be relaxing, retired, who certainly has done his part and paid his dues, who says, no, my work is not yet done. Because every day that God gives us, we're here on earth for a reason. I find Ron Young to be a truly inspiring leader, because he's not here to ask for your vote. He's not asking for donations. He's saying, could you come with an open heart?
No, that's what we need. I mean, that's exactly what Christ would be calling us all to do, is to just open our mouths and start preaching a little bit like that. So I really respect him. I respect him tremendously on that. That's wonderful. So, all right, so we'll keep up to date on that. Very good. All right, I want to talk a little bit here tonight, maybe our last topic here. Let's talk a little bit about the speech last night with Trump. Well, not last night. It was Thursday night, wasn't it? Getting my days all mixed up. But anyhow, so Trump, so it would have been Thursday. He gave that primetime address to the newly declassified.
Censored by most of the media, I might add.
All right. I know. And if you've watched anything that CNN, ABC, CBS has put out about it, they're all saying, oh, what Trump said, there was a lot to do about nothing. And that this declassified information and stuff that Trump was talking about, it's nothing. He's just rehashing old things. But I'm thinking to myself, you morons, ABC, NBC, you didn't even broadcast it. You didn't even have the guts to broadcast it. That tells you the communist influence we have with our media today. And they're not even covering it up.
Let me say it loud. Let me say it proud. The 2020 election was stolen. Donald Trump has been proven right so many times. We've seen so much voter fraud in so many states and so many contexts, and every time we learn more, it's worse than we think, and China is somehow involved with the Democrat Party. It is disgusting to see the influence of the CCP on our elections, and yet no one wants to talk about it because their masters will not be happy if any of the Democrats cop to what happened. I'm sorry, but no one believes the results in 2020, including the people who rigged the election, because they know better than you what they did.
Joe Biden doesn't even believe he won in 2020, okay? He doesn't even believe it. Do you think, have you heard anything, you personally, have you heard anything about this whole idea of the United States Postal Service not delivering ballots unless they've been approved by the federal government? So now you have a little bit of lawyermanship in you. Where do you think that's going to go? Do you think
it's going to go? It's going to go to the Supreme Court of the United States. We all know that, right? This is a federal issue. It's going to be appealed all the way to the top. How Chief Justice John Roberts rules along with the moderate justices, I don't know. That's a hard one because they've ruled with and against Trump on so many different issues. They've been very unpredictable. I would not be comfortable calling the outcome of the case. But where is it going to go? It's going to go to the Supreme Court.
Okay, so now if Trump does this because he's got control of the post office, it's part of the executive branch, okay? And the Democrats are saying, well, Congress, the states control elections. And Trump is saying, yeah, but I control the Postal Service. Now, you can't send anything to the Supreme Court because he hasn't officially done it yet. So my thinking is if he waits a little bit longer and then demands that it be done, the Supreme Court is not going to be able to rule on it until after the election, right?
Well, let's be real. If the Supreme Court wants to accept certiorari, put it on a rocket docket and hear it, they can hear it very quickly. It comes down to what the Supreme Court wants to do. So if they want Donald Trump to prevail, they probably say this is a very complicated case, we need to take our time, and then they ultimately rule in his favor a year later, after it's all said and done. If they're against Trump, expect them to rocket docket and rule very quickly so that the election doesn't get solidified, so that people don't start certifying results before the ballots are forced back in by the Supreme Court. So I think there will be a big tell if and when that case is decided. If the Supreme Court's taking their time, they're probably on President Trump's side. If they're moving quickly, look for them to rule against President Trump on that issue.
All right, so we'll have to stay. We got to stay tuned for that one.
But Joe, I want to address something else that President Trump raised in the last few days. I think it needs to be said. Canada needs to be held accountable for this insane intercontinental smog that they've created. Their complete lack of husbandry and forest management. Their slashing of their budget for fire prevention. This is the net result. I think that the amount of pollution they've generated is roughly equivalent to all the traffic in the Midwest for an entire year over the course of a few days. And they're pushing this carcinogenic smog south towards the Midwest. Ohio, New York, Michigan have all been affected. And I want to give kudos to our Senator Bernie Moreno for pledging to introduce legislation to sanction Canada and Canadian officials for their total lack of responsibility on this issue. I'm sorry, but for them to play victim and claim this is climate change has become the new dog ate my homework excuse.
I hadn't heard that one. I had not heard that they were going to. You can't complain. Climate change, they started the fires. Those fires were started in Canada.
The Canadian Prime Minister, in response to questions, how do you feel about accusations that you're not managing the forest? His response was climate change. That was it. That's all he had to say, because he has no response. They've slashed their budget for safety and fire prevention. And so over the last 3 years, if you live in a border state like Ohio or New York or Michigan, you've experienced unhealthy levels of smog wafting down from our neighbor to the north, hitting us all for days over the summer. And it's got progressively worse. They have not recognized, whoops, we cut the budget so low, this is becoming an international problem. It's not just affecting the health and safety of Canadians, it's now affecting the health and safety of Americans and border states. Heck, the smog got all the way down to Washington, D.C. at its worst. So we're seeing a real health and safety problem. I think you're going to see people arguably getting cancer over the next some odd years as a result of this and wanting to sue. I mean, this is going to be a huge and growing problem because Canada has obviously decided this is another expense they're just going to push off a negative externality they're going to push off on the United States. We already pay for basically all of their military protection. Their military is smaller than the population of Lake County, Ohio. So Canada is not defending itself. The United States is projecting our military supremacy to protect them. And now they're basically saying we're not going to deal with forest fires either. And if that smogs up an entire continent, we'll just blame it on climate change. And I know what they're hoping. They're hoping the problem gets so bad the United States ends up paying for it so that we don't have health and safety issues as a result of their forest fires. And I want to close by saying this for the liberals who respond, well, what about the forest fires in the United States? You know, we have them too. It's like, yeah, in California, which is being run about as well as Canada.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, last topic. I'll also get Kent in on this. And I want to get your thoughts on Mitch McConnell. Is he dead or is he alive or is he somewhere in between? Or what's your thoughts? What do you think? Let me send it over to John Pleshnik first. John, what do you think? Is Mitch McConnell alive? Is he dead? Is he a cardboard cutout like this? What's going on with the guy? Any clue?
So, Joe, I find that particular picture particularly suspect. I think this is an example of a very well done AI deepfake. I don't think Mitch McConnell, I don't think Mitch McConnell, the infamous turtle who always kept the.
Wait a minute, you're saying this one is not legit. This is AI created. That
it does not look
okay.
legit to me. I mean,
All
just the fact that he's grinning like a Cheshire cat, that's not Mitch McConnell. Anyone who's followed him throughout politics, even when he had his greatest political victories, he's like, you know, he's not particularly happy man. So the fact he's on his deathbed in the hospital trying to put out a picture to prove he's still alive, smiling, that doesn't resonate with me. That said, do I think that he's literally dead? In this day and age, it would be extraordinarily hard to perpetuate a fraud like that on the people of America. I don't think he's dead. Is he on his deathbed? Is he perhaps practically a vegetable? Is he capable of responding? I think it's fair to ask those questions. Do I think he's literally dead and we're playing Weekend at Bernie's? I don't think so. I think that he is trying. I think his family is trying through him to hold on to the seat through the end of the year. But do I think he's dead? I wouldn't bet on that. Do I think that's a real picture of him engaging with his wife in the public? No, I don't. I suspect that he is very ill. I suspect that he's having a hard time speaking. Otherwise, we wouldn't get a picture of him. We'd get a press conference where he said, hey, I'm having a really tough time. Yeah. I may not talk to you for a while, but I'm going to pull through this. The fact he's not talking to us says
But Johnny had a 20-minute conversation with Scott Jennings. Remember? They talked about the history of the Senate. They went on and on and on. He talked about all the topics with Mitch. I mean, a 20-minute, and a couple of the, John Thune talked to him for 20 minutes. So the best we can do.
Can we see a video of those conversations?
Do we have what?
Can we see a video of those conversations?
Nah, you ain't going to see nothing about those conversations. Nothing at all. Kent!
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to let you
first off,
go ahead, man.
Yeah, first off, I got to say, I'm checking in the chats. I can't post them tonight, but also make sure to, wherever you're watching tonight, to follow us and share this out to all the different platforms that you're on. If you are on Rumble or on YouTube, there are ways to do a Rumble rant on Rumble or a super chat. You can also support us on Facebook through stars. You can also go to ohiopoliticalnews.com/shop and go to the merchandise page there. And also there's a donation button right at the main page. I just want to get that plug out. I'm looking in the chat on YouTube just now, and on the last comment that John mentioned, they were mentioning in the chat how Canada is pure, just the crazies up there, and that's what you get. And I totally agree. It doesn't even smell like a campfire, so I don't even know. I know it's definitely pollution because it smells like a campfire when we were up in at our house. And then I also have a chat mentioning that they did put that picture that you put up, Joe, and the AI experts say it is a real picture. So I don't know if that's what I'm getting in the chat. Who knows what year it was? That's a great question too. Was it recent or a couple of years ago? That other situations when he was in the hospital. I think he's probably still. I think I'm gonna lean to John's side where I think he's still
alive.
But
It's so horrible that we're having debates about whether the guy's alive. You think if he's alive, he could prove it, right?
Right. Well, I think the main thing, and then John mentioned that too, was I think it's the whole thing with the Senate. I think that's the biggest thing. And I know you guys are going to be covering the Senate race in Ohio too. That's going to be a huge race. And I think a lot of it's going to comes up to there's going to be a lot of, what's going to happen down in South Carolina and Lindsey Graham seat. I mean, I know that probably be a pretty easy one. I mean, but they're all up for grab, and especially Ohio is going to be a very.
Oh, the midterms are huge. The midterms are absolutely huge. Yeah, we're going to be ready for that because that's going to be huge. The midterms. We're going to cover it live, and boy, that's going to be an amazing time coming up in November. Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking forward to that. Yeah, and I've heard the same thing that this photo here is legit. Oh, I'm sorry. This photo here is legit. Although I don't know. I kind of think there's some credibility there too. Anyhow, who knows? Mitch, if you're alive, give us a call, please. You guys take care, man. We'll see you. God bless you. Have a good one.
You too.